Hi, it's Donna Joy Usher. I am one half of Social Media Bomb, and I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you about storytelling. So you may or may not have seen my last video when I talked about the number one mistake that most people are making with branding, and that's that they're ignoring their messaging, or they're not making the most of their messaging. And at the end of that, I talked about your story and how your story is a very important part of messaging. And I said that I was going to talk about good storytelling. So that's what I'm going to do in this video. So if you haven't seen that last video, go check it out. And then this video might make a bit more sense, but it's going to make total sense anyway, because what we're talking about, I'm going to go through the three main important things of storytelling. I'm going to give you a couple of examples, okay? So I'm going to give you an example of a classic, and then I'm going to give you my story and show you how I break it down into good format, and that's what I use within my marketing. Okay, so there's three main elements of any good story, okay? There's the beginning, the middle, and the end. Sorry, I know that sounds simple, right? But I'm going to go through each part and tell you the important parts that have to be within there. So the beginning, all right, so the beginning of any story, any good story anyway, the beginning is like a hook. Okay, so the beginning is where you hook people into the story so they have to keep going through the story. So in that beginning, you ask questions that you don't answer. And you need to really build up your main character, and you need to be able to build some sort of emotional rapport between the reader or the listener and this main character. You need to make them care about them and what happens to them, or you're going to lose them. Okay, so when you go through to the next part of the story, they're not going to care about what's going to happen to that main character, so you're going to lose them. Okay, now the middle of the story is where the action happens, where there are things that are going to happen to this character. Now, the important thing about the transfer from the middle, the beginning to the middle, is that it's a one-way doorway, okay? So something happens at the end of the first act that forces that character through into the second act, and he must go pretty much reluctantly, okay, for it to be believable. No one wants to read about some gung-ho hero who's like, yay, rah, 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 all the way through, okay? That's, you know, because we ourselves are reluctant in a lot of things that we do. So when people are reluctant, we can relate to that a lot more easily, and your main character has to be relatable, okay? They need to have their flaws and their weaknesses so that people can build rapport with them, because nobody is perfect. So something happens at the end of that first act that drives them into the second act, and there can be no going back. So it's kind of like the reluctant hero basically going forth into battle, into the middle. Now, the middle has to have ups and downs, okay? It can't just be all smooth sailing. There has to be a gain, a loss, a gain, a loss, a gain, a loss. You kind of have to people having on a roller coaster through the middle to keep it exciting, okay? So if it's all just too easy, it's boring. It needs to be hard, but then they get a little reprieve from that, okay? Now, at the end of the middle, once again, something happens that drives them into the final act. But what normally happens is that it's not something so much, but a piece of information that is given to the character that now allows them to go forth into the final battle. So, and it's normally a case of at the end of that second act, it seems like all is lost. But all of a sudden they get given this piece of information that makes them realize that perhaps they have a chance. And then they go forward into that last act. And then that is when you resolve any unanswered questions that you opened up in the beginning. So you opened a loop in the first act, and the end is when you close. You make sure that all unanswered questions are closed down, and you give the reader either the success or the failure or the ending that you have chosen for that character. Okay. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to show you Star Wars as an example. Okay. So in the first act in Star Wars, Luke is working on the farm of his aunt and uncle's farm. He dreams for more. He wants more, but he's stuck in the farm. And then a droid turns up, and in that droid's head is a message from Princess Leia to Obi-Wan Kenobi. So he takes the droid out to Ben Kenobi, not realizing that he actually is Obi-Wan Kenobi. And Ben decides that he has to go and basically enter an old battle that he was a part of, the dance between good and evil. He needs to go back into that battle to save Princess Leia. And he wants Luke to go with him. Now, Luke would love to go with him, but he can't. And Luke is loyal. So rather than just running off on his poor aunt and uncle, he decides to go back to the farm. But when he gets back there, the stormtroopers have killed them and they're dead. So that is the end of the first act and then Luke goes through the door into the second act, so there can be no return. He can't go back to that life he had on the farm because it no longer exists. Instead, he's forced forward into somewhere that he, like an adventure that he might have chosen willingly, but he didn't because of what was happening in that first act, and he would never have asked for the death of his aunt and uncle. So not only is he forced through the door because of their death, but also because of what he now knows. He's forced into his ethics, and his moral takes him forward into battle. So during the middle part, there's ups and downs. So they find out where Princess Leia is. They find a pilot that can take them there. But when they get there, a tractor beam catches their ship and draws it in. So they know that now once they've got the princess, they can't get away. So Ben Kenobi goes off to try and dismantle that. They go off to find the princess. They're able to find the princess. They have some close moments where they're almost caught, and then they free her, and then in their escape they jump into the room which is the garbage thing, and they nearly get crushed to death. So you can see the ups and downs here. They escape, they're on their way back to the ship, but when they're almost there, they see Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi fighting, and they see Obi-Wan Kenobi die. So then they're onto the ship and they're off, and then they go back to the Rebel Forces home base, and they find out that the Death Star is going to kill that planet, and they've only got a certain amount of time before it happens, and it seems that all is lost. Except for a piece of information. So this is the piece of information that drives Luke forward into the third act, and that information is that there is a weakness in the Death Star that they can exploit, but it's like a 1 in a million shot that they have to make, and if they can make this shot, the Death Star will explode. So Luke decides to go into battle against the Death Star so that he can try and take it out. And then we're taken into that final act where Luke goes into battle, and then he has to trust in himself and using the Force and get rid of his headset thing that everyone else is using, and it's through the Force that he manages to have that success. So that is the exciting Star Wars. So, but that's a pretty epic story. So how do we bring that back to our story? Okay, so I'm going to very quickly and very with no emotion involved, just going to give you the pointers of my story. So now if I was, I would save my full story for if I was up on stage talking to motivate people. But what I do with my stories, I pull little bits of it out, and I use it and I weave it into stories, other stories, to show that I know and I understand, and I've been there and done that in a lot of cases. Okay. So my story is that I was trained as a dentist, and then I had my own dental practice, and I was trapped. I felt trapped by dentistry and by dental practice, but by my income as well, because people always think, oh, we're earning a lot of money, but the thing is that when you're earning a lot of money, you gear yourself up to earn a lot of money, then all of a sudden you're trapped into earning that same amount of money. So there I was as a dentist. I hated being stuck in a room all day. Some days I know you don't even get to go to the toilet when you need to go. Some days you don't get to eat because, you're running late, and, all this stuff's going on. It was quite a stressful environment when I had my own practice as well, and I felt very trapped by it. And then I had a really bad car accident, which gave me some bulging discs in my neck. So now not only am I feeling trapped by my profession, but now I have pain, incredible pain in my neck. And the chances now of me being able to work full-time as a dentist for the rest of my life, it's not going to happen. And I had to actually sell my practice and start to work part-time. It's one of the things I had to do. So it was that neck injury that finally gave me the thing where I all of a sudden I had no choice. Okay, I was reluctantly staying within it, like Luke was reluctantly staying on the farm, even though I longed for more. But it was the neck injury that forced me through the door and into the middle act, which is basically me trying to work out how to have an income some other way. So we bought a bathroom renovation business, which was a disaster, but I learned a lot. And what I learned from that, the 3 years of running that, was that I needed a business that had no overheads. Okay, and that drove me to online. So then I decided to write books. I loved reading. I thought I was pretty clever. I thought I could write a book. I spent a year writing a book, and then I couldn't even get a publisher to look at it because by then the whole publishing system was changing with online marketing. The competition was steep, and they were no longer looking at new authors. So I realized if I was ever going to have the book published, I had to do it myself. So I started to learn how to self-publish. So that took a little while. I finally learned how to self-publish. I published my first book, and I sat back waiting for the millions to roll in. And that first month, I think I sold 1 book, and I suspect it was my mother who bought it. And in that first year, I went on to write another book. And in that first year with 2 books out there, I think I'd sold a total of 72 books. Now, I put my books in and won awards for them, and I thought that was going to make a difference, but it didn't. I decided to learn how to online market myself, because the Amazon algorithm, I found some ways that were quite good to market my books, but they were becoming less and less effective, and it was because I wasn't in control of the situation or of who they were getting put in. So I turned to online marketing, and that was back in 2012, and that's when my online marketing when I started really starting to buy courses back then to try and learn how to take control of my own author income. Now I started to realize that if I was going to become an overnight success as an author, it was going to take years. It's a joke we make where we're like, it took 10 years to become an overnight success. But I realized it was going to take years, and I didn't have that sort of time. So I got into network marketing and then affiliate marketing, and that was all great because it taught me a lot of things about funnels and copywriting and all this stuff that I probably wouldn't have learned if I hadn't have gone down those rabbit holes. So the end of the second act, I was getting pretty desperate. I invested in a really large sum of money that I really couldn't afford into an affiliate marketing program, and basically come out with nothing. Okay, so I put the money in, and then I did what they said, and then it just wasn't working. But what I got out of it was a piece of information. And I learned that what everyone out there was teaching on online marketing wasn't what they were doing, and that there was a whole strategy that they were putting together that was what was making them successful. And that was the information that drove me from that middle act to that final act. So I clarified in my head what it was and how it was working, and then I did some more research, and then I found Steph, my business partner, and we talked about how best to use this information, and then we decided on Social Media Bomb, where here you are now, and our program Boomers, where we basically teach the strategy to people, to client-based businesses. And this works for, honestly, this strategy works for any niche, and it works for basically, like, even network marketers and things like that, if they can use this strategy to sell their product and to build a team and things like that. So we are now, and now that's what we're doing, and basically that's the end of my story. Now as I go on, obviously that story will grow as we become even more successful and we branch off into different ways. My story will keep growing. But you can see there how I've broken my story down to the 3 acts: the beginning that drove me into the middle, the information that drove me into the end, and the ups and downs that I had through the middle. And that is how you tell a story. So a hook at the beginning, a character that people can relate to and that they want to win, the ups and downs through the middle, and then a piece of information that drives them through into the final act. And that's where they either have the triumph or they don't. Okay, well, I hope you got something out of that video. I'd love you to reach out to me if you've got any questions on it. You can find me on Facebook, Donna Joy Usher, or our Facebook page, Social Media Bomb, or I'm on Instagram, Donna Joy Coaching. So reach out to me, let me know what you think, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel so that you can see more of my videos.